All right. Hello and welcome to the first of the UTK Model UN training videos. This is actually the second time I've recorded this video because I recorded the first thing in full, tried to upload it to YouTube, found out that I had to verify my account to be able to upload a video longer than 15 minutes, and it then made me delete the video because it was longer than that, and I had already deleted the video on my computer and emptied my recycle bin. So it was lost, and now I have to start from the beginning, but that's okay. So what we're going to be looking at today is what makes a good crisis arc, and to do that, we're going to be looking at this digitized version of Parker Bennett's notes from the Chicago Board of Aldermen Committee at CHOMUN 2025 back in February of last year of 2022. So his role was Bert Notaris. He was the alderman of the 42nd Ward. And his goal, the Batman had just come out, so his goal was essentially to become a masked vigilante protecting the city. And he did end up getting an honorable mention in this committee. In my opinion, I think he should have gotten outstanding or best delegate, but I wasn't in the committee. I wasn't one of the staffers. Maybe somebody else did really well and just did better. But anyway, so the first note is always the most important note in a committee. You really want to set out your general plan, like your final goal, by the end of committee, and you want to have that goal. You never want to go into a committee like, I don't really know what my crisis arc is. You want to know exactly what you want to happen by the end of committee. You don't have to have concrete step 1 through 10 plan A through Z, but you do need to know what that final goal is and a general outline of how you're going to get there. And then note 1 also should include step 1 of that plan. And Parker has both of these here. This paragraph here, you see he's laying out a plan to become the hero the city needs. And 2 here, he's creating the Board of Pedro Cabal, which is a private board for developers to join, which he's going to use in his plans. And then the TLDR here is also very important because a lot of times your committees are going to be understaffed. You might have one staffer. If you're lucky, you might have one staffer per 3 delegates, but you might have, one staffer per 6 delegates or more. So TLDR is really helpful for your staffers to be able to know what you actually want to get done. And then here's the first response he got. It's essentially just a check mark. Go ahead. That's a great response, kind of thing you want. Note 2, this is a 2 notepad system. When he wrote this note here, he had not yet gotten response 1 and so on and so forth. So on this notepad, he's creating Burt Property, a property company, and he's renting out an office space for it, and he's contacting developers to join Burt Properties, offering to rezone Chicago for their needs. And what's important here is that he's saying, please take liability to rent out an office space. This is essentially covering his bases. It's putting out fires before you start. Because a lot of times, if you're vague and kind of general with your crisis will essentially say good start, but we need more. So in this instance, that might have taken the form of, okay, you founded the company, but you don't have any headquarters, facilities, you don't have any employees, etc. And then he's using the Board of Pedro as a resource. This is good. You want to use the resources you establish. There's no point in establishing them if you don't do anything with them. And then here's the company's been created. And this is the first bit back he gets. We're not sure how you can alter the zoning. Can you elaborate on that? And this is back to the first one, the one where he just essentially got a check mark. I'd like to thank you for your work. But now that Burt Property's created, we need some work. And then this is why it's important to do research on your character. Bert Notaris did in real life serve in the military. So he says, on my desk there's a folio of men I worked with in the military. And then here's a letter he's sending them. And just like this letter up here, it is important when you write a note to somebody who is not in committee to actually physically write that note. Don't just, give crisis a blank slate to write whatever they want. Write out write out the letter. Also, if I mentioned this at the start, all of this notes should be in letter format like this. So, dear whatever secretary name, blah, 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 TLDR, sincerely, character name. You can put a PS if you want, like he did here. So he's military here, he's trying to get a military contract so that the books for his company can be labeled as secret so that they're protected from auditors. And then the response he gets here is essentially, yep, good job. It's another great response. It's the kind of thing you want. Note 4, and I apologize for moving through these quickly. The last video was 42 minutes, and I don't want this one to be that long. So if there's anything that's unclear, feel free to it in the comments or to message me on GroupMe or anywhere else and ask for further clarification on something I've said or one of the notes or what have you. So the topic of the meeting is the 42nd Ward zoning. He's making it clear that he's only able to the zoning of Ward 42. Now, that's important because since he's the 42nd Ward's alderman, it is credible that he would have that authority. If he said, like, you know, if you work with me, I can rezone the entire city of Chicago or the entire state of Illinois, that is something that Crisis would push back heavily on, because probably just stonewall you and just flat out say you can't do that, because that's not something that would be within his authority to do. And then, you know, a little bit of a fake, I can't even think of altruism here. You know, sure, I'm expanding my power, but it's for your sake. And then, you know, this just in character, he wants to know how they react. So he's saying, tell me how they react, because, you know, I'll be stuck in my head while I'm speaking. It's important to stay in character when you're writing your notes. You know, if you want to ask your crisis staffer something as yourself and not as your character, you know, just put like in parentheses, like, is this good enough or whatever, you know, something like that. But generally stay in character. Another TLDR here. And then they're still pushing back on the zoning. Don't think he's explained it enough. And then this is back on pad 1. Now that the books are secret, he can create the Nightingales, an organization focused on being ahead of crime in Chicago. The Nightingales are going to act as one person, but he's going to need a base of operations and specialized men. He's purchasing a building, which is going to be a cave, essentially. He's purchasing military surplus. He laid out that he has military connections in a previous note. They went along with it, so they can't now be like, oh, actually, you don't know anybody in the military who can get you this. So he's getting black clothing, armor, weapons, and ammo, but only enough for 15 to 30 crime-fighting men. And then he's hiring the men, resources, and veterans and private military contractors, but they need the best. And then he's going to take a look at the books of Construction Unlimited, which my understanding is that it's a company that another delegate or a group of delegates had started that was essentially just a front for criminal operations. So he's working with them to get a look at their books to know who is and who is not a criminal. And then the summary, sincerely, the idea is brilliant, the plan is executed, the building is purchased, blah, blah, blah. However, even though Construction Limited is a criminal business, not many other criminals are known. Please elaborate on that. And then his next note here, he hasn't seen this part yet. This is where he wraps up the zoning thing. He says, I'm not actually going to alter any zoning. He's just saying that they will to get them on board. And then here's his mind map. Create the board of developers, which he's already done. Invite him to Burt property, which he's already done. Claim he's going to alter zoning laws for companies that work with him. He's already done that. Get military contracts to make my book secret. He's done that. And then subcontract one of the developers that joined to do the work for me while I get paid. This he mentioned. It doesn't ever get mentioned by the staffers, so I just assume that it happened. If you're in committee, don't assume that. But, you know, I wasn't in this committee. All I have from this committee are his 2 notepads. So he's going to ignore the zoning until the need arises, and it never does arise, but that's always a possibility. You always want to be aware of potential fires in the future, and hopefully put them out before they start, but if not, at least be aware that, you know, it is flammable. And then using the money in the secret label, he's going to create the Nightingale, and that's not the whole plan, just where they are. And then here's a response. This is going to take a lot of time and resources. We've got a lot of police, and even they can't handle this. You know, can one person do this? Consider thinking bigger. Maybe Chicago could use an Avengers force of their own. This right here is really important. When your crisis staffer says, like, consider this, maybe you should do this, they're, you know, shepherding you along the path that you should take. Your crisis staffer wants you to succeed, but they don't want to just, you know, sign off on everything you want, because they want, you know, they want it to be fun for everybody. So they want to, you know, give every single person everything that they want, or else, you know, there'd be no challenge. It wouldn't be entertaining. P.S. You may want to detail how you do damage control to shape media narratives. Same thing here. Note 7. Thank you so much for your kind words. They lighten and brighten my day. This is something that I see a lot of people not doing in their crisis notes that I think is very important. You know, a good crisis director won't let somebody flip secretary without warning you first. But unfortunately, not all crisis directors are good crisis directors. So it's a good idea to generally establish why your secretary, and by secretary I just mean whoever you're writing to, in this instance, Eunice and Ikababi, which are the same two people that Parker writes to in every committee. Establish some sort of reason for why they work with you and why they won't betray you. So that could be, in this instance, you know, thank you so much for your kind words. They lighten and brighten my day. He's establishing, you know, a personal relationship. They're friends. So if another alderman was like, hey, I'll give you $10,000 to sell out Bert Nataras, they're not going to do that. Another way would be like a lot of time, especially if you're playing a villain in committee. Like I was in a committee that was the MCU after everybody came back from Thanos' snap, and I was Thaddeus Ross. I was, you know, set up to be the villain of that committee. So my secretary and my first note, I established leverage. I was like, you know, get this done. Because if you don't, I'd hate to see, you know, what would happen to your family or something like that. You just establish, you know, whether positive or negatively, why they're not going to betray you. He's going to train his guys, and then he's going to get them a uniform, a full black business suit with a ski mask and military helmet and a black cape. And then here's his drawing of it. Drawings are good. Anything, you know, drawings, jokes, etc., anything that makes your staffer excited to read your next note is good for you. Because that'll mean that you're a delegate that they remember well, and if you're a delegate that they remember well, you're a lot more likely to do well in awards. Obviously, awards aren't the only thing that matter, but you know they are. It is great. It's nice to be recognized for the hard work that you've put in your committee. All the required materials should be funded by the profits of Burt property. That's very important. If you embark on a plan that requires funding and don't mention how you're funding it, crisis is going to say, well, how are you going to fund this? And then you have to waste a note that you otherwise could have used to advance your plan just by putting out a fire that shouldn't have started in the first place. If you had been, you know, specific enough. He's going to take down as many criminals as possible, working with criminal companies like Construction Unlimited to take them out and expose them systematically. He's keeping his enemies close. Many of them are in the city council. TLDR, your training program and crime fighting infrastructure in place. I admire your panache, but Chicago needs more than a group of costumed heroes. Are you the hero this city needs? I need to know how you plan to carry out your nightly and daily duties. You know, essentially just, you know, you're a mid-50s man. I don't know that you're capable of doing this. And then this is in response to the media. You're correct. We need to get into the media and shape the opinion on the Nightingale. The best way to do this is manipulate the media. He's going to bribe people to get them to say that the Nightingale saved them in the 42nd Ward. He's going to pay him to do so. And then employ citizens that you have a good head on their task for this, that you deem have a good on their shoulders for this task. This is what I was talking about when you say if you don't mention how you're paying for something, crisis is going to say, how are you paying for this? Like they did right here. And then he has to send a note explaining how he pays for it. Yeah, media control is extremely important in any committee. It does not matter what your committee is. It does not matter if it's 5000 BC or 5000 AD. You need, if you can get control of the media, that is incredibly beneficial to you. My first ever committee was at Elon University's training conference in the fall of 2021. My committee was the Libyan ceasefire government in 2016. I was the Minister of National Reconciliation, which didn't really have much power, but we passed a directive to establish a national media agency, and I added a clause that put that agency under the control of the Ministry of National Reconciliation. Now, usually a blatant power grab like that will not fly. Somebody's going to be like, this is clearly him trying to consolidate power, and that clause will get struck. But in this instance, it ended up working out, and because I had control of the only media agency in the country, I was able to overthrow the government at the end of committee, and I had the people on my side. So here's this. How are you funding the bribes? Also, the media might get suspicious. How are you dealing with that? This is in response to, are you the hero this city needs? So he's recruiting 60 more people, but they're not going to be Nightingales. They're going to be new heroes. This is his Avengers initiative he was talking about. And then this is giving your crisis staffer room for creativity is great. So this is him literally just saying, you can design the other four heroes. In this instance, the staffer doesn't end up doing that, to my knowledge. At least in these notes, no other heroes are mentioned by name. They're just mentioned as like the other heroes or the Knights of Justice you can see here, which is his Avengers. So maybe the staffer did create four other heroes and mention them in an update. I don't know. But giving your staffer room to improvise is great. They're hiring all these people so they can be in more than one place at once in the same costume so that, criminals are scared. He's videotaping the training to make sure everybody's ready. He's going to make do. He's going to make less public appearances. And that's how he's going to handle daily and nighttime duties. And then he's creating the Knights of Justice, which is his Avengers. And then he's going to hire retired and private investigators as like the pencil pushers of this agency. And they're all going to have to sign non-disclosure agreements. Here's his TLDR. This is a great response. I know a lot of time, it can be frustrating when you get a response. You spend, 20, 30 minutes writing your note, and it's very detailed. It's like a page and a half long, and all you get back is like a sentence and a half that says like, we'll do what you asked. But, as disappointing as it can be, because they're not really, it doesn't look like they're reciprocating your effort. A, you're getting what you want, and B, that wasn't the only thing they were doing in that time. At this point, I think I've been a crisis director as many times or more than I've been a delegate. And in a note cycle, what you don't see is that staffer is not only reading and responding to your note, they're reading and responding to, anywhere from 2 to 5 other notes. They're helping the crisis director come up with an update. They're looking back at previous notes. Other people's, notes that other staffers had might tie into yours, so they're trying to work that out. So they're constantly working. So when you see something like this, it's not your staffer being lazy. It's your staffer has 15,000 other things they need to be doing. And getting a go-ahead is always good. Next note, here's the bribe. Sourcing him through the looking for work section. He doesn't actually ever mention where he's getting the funding. But the staffer never does either, which don't bank on that happening. He got lucky here that the staffer didn't push further about where are you getting this money. And, if all he had to say was, I'm getting the money from, from Burke Properties. And then, there's that. That's answered. But he never did. Staffer never brought it up again, but don't bank on that happening. If you always mention where you're getting your funding, and if you don't and get asked where it's coming from, answer them. So they're going to solve crime. They've been working with Construction Unlimited and have the books. He's doubling the private investigators, and he's going to track down all the criminals working with Construction Unlimited. He's going to investigate them, get evidence, jump them, and drop them off at the police station. When he drops them off, they're going to have evidence duct taped to their chest with a sign that says, "From the Nightingale." And then plans were a success, blah, 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 the myth grows daily. This is great. This is the kind of response you want. Your plan is a success. You're getting more and more popular. Note 11. Now, I believe Kotlars was another alderman who was in committee, who was working with the mafia, I believe. Kotlars is a criminal, and the Nightingale will deliver him to justice. He's cleaning his own company's books so that there's no association between him and Construction Unlimited. That's good, covering his tracks. He's going to start collecting evidence on Kotlars, and then he's going to arrest him going to and from the city council, and then he's going to hold him at the hideout, and then record a confession, turn it into the news agencies. Now, this is more detailed than his crime-fighting plans for other ones, which it always should be when you're going after another member of committee, because your staffers are always going to push back harder on you doing something that will screw over another member of committee than they will somebody who's not involved at all. Like, say you're in a U.S. Cabinet Committee and you're the Secretary of Defense. It's going to be a lot harder for you to assassinate the Secretary of State than it would be to assassinate, some random mayor somewhere. And even this ends up not being enough for the plan to go through. Crisis ends up asking for more details. See your setup, we need more information, but they are tracking him. Also, another councilman has requested a meeting with the Nightingale. That's good. That means he's come up in front room. If your crisis arc comes up in front room, that's almost always a good thing, especially if it comes up through a timed crisis. Even if, and Parker is a really great example of this, because Parker This committee is one of two times that I am aware of Parker being a good guy in committee. He's almost always the antagonist by choice. And a part of that is if you're the antagonist, you probably want to keep your evil plan secret. But if you don't, and they get brought up in committee, and you get put on trial, then that means everyone's looking at you, everyone's talking about you, you're the focus of attention. Your chairs and co-chairs are paying attention, and that's very good for awards. Even if your character dies, or you get removed from the cabinet, whatever, and have to have a new character, that's very good. You can still get an award even if you have to get a second character. At VIX 2023, I started as one character, he died, I got a second one, and then I still got an award. Note 12 here, he's creating a bat signal here, and this is his drawing. He's going to install this bat signal on the top of the Chicago Police Department. He's got specific steps here, taking off company logos off the crane, covering his tracks. He's got fake documents if anyone asks any questions. And he's also, adding on, just one little sentence here at the end. Oh, by the way, I want to run for vice mayor with the mayor. Not sure if the mayor was in committee or if he was the chair or if he was just a crisis resource or what. But he's trying to run for re-election alongside him. Here's the response. The signal was constructed as well. The people love you. The city council doesn't. Washington doesn't want to run with you, but you can run for mayor against him. Also, one of the aldermen wants you to rough up. I don't know how to pronounce this. I don't know if I've even spelled it right. I couldn't really make out the crisis staffer's handwriting. But presumably this is another alderman as well. And then this note is he's hiring teens to spray paint the Nightingale symbol across the city. And then he's buying as much maple syrup as he can because apparently a Canadian militia had come up in committee somehow and were like terrorizing Chicago. So he's trying to give them a peace offering of maple syrup. The teens, some spray painted the logo, but most spray painted profanities, as would be expected. But they did get the maple syrup. And then here's more detail on the Kotlar's plan from earlier. This is good. This is more evidence on collecting the evidence, or more detail on collecting the evidence, more detail on arresting the guy, more detail on preparation for arresting the guy, more detail for arresting the guy, more detail for the interrogation. And then here's, to be clear, just in case, never hurts to be never hurts to confirm things multiple times. And then he's going to go into Gene's house, and I believe that Gene, I don't know if they were a member of committee or what, but they were in some way affiliated with the mafia, and they had just died. So he's dressing up Nightingales as police officers to go into the house and search for evidence of mafia connections. And then he's meeting with Alderman Davis at the Nightingale Spotlight. Response 14, Alderman Davis will be reaching out, and Alderman Gutierrez also wants to reach out, and they're going to execute the Kotlar's plan soon. They searched Gene's place, wasn't much there, looked to be totally verbal communications. And then this is in response to the spray painting. He says, oh well, if there's profanities, at least the symbol's out there. But for the Canadians, he's going to give the Canadians the maple syrup on the conditions that the Nightingales assist immigrant Canadians in the city, on the condition that they support the Nightingale, wear Nightingale merch, Chicago PD wears Nightingale merch, and then a couple members of the committee here. I don't actually remember if Timothy Evans was one person or if this was supposed to be Timothy, Evans, Beavers, and Burton Nightingale. But regardless, and then along with the support of the Canadians, the final life will begin. Release Kotlar tied to a chair in front of the house of Al Capone with the evidence tied to his chest. Sounds good. We'll mobilize the Nightingale troops to begin justice upon our enemies, and we'll release Kotlar. Great response. It's essentially just good plan. We got it. Second to last note here. This is where you really want to set everything up for your final note, which is your second most important note. Nick Locke here, a former member of this club, used to say, you can't, in regard to the importance of first note and just first committee sessions in general, you can't win committee on day one, but you can damn sure lose committee on day one. And the same goes for your final note. If you've been doing poorly all committee, a masterpiece final note isn't going to get you probably any award at all, let alone best delegate. And if you've been doing really well and you fumble the last note, that could ruin things for you. So, it's important to keep up your momentum. If you have any, failure notes or anything, you want them to be somewhere in here in the middle. You want to have a strong beginning and you want to have a strong ending. So the Chicago PD and the Nightingales are working together. The Nightingales are arresting the Schulter family, which I believe is Jean's family. I'm not sure. Beavers, another member of committee, is going to be a non-violent interrogator with the family. PD will take the family in for questioning. Nightingale and Beavers will interrogate the family about mob connections. And they're asked where the mob is and the names of who Jean worked with. And then they'll meet with Davis, but not Gutierrez because Gutierrez is a criminal. And then Beavers also signed off on this note. This was a JPD. Response 16, it'll be done. Also, you're fighting a dirty underground. This is the kind of response you're likely to see towards the end of committee because the staffers are tired. They want to wrap it up and they want to have, this grand finale for committee. So, don't be too ambitious at the end, but you can be more ambitious at the end. And things that wouldn't have worked out earlier in committee, they'll let you get away with. And Dirty Underground, I believe, was like a criminal network that several delegates had created. So the Nightingales are engaged in street fighting with them. And then here's his final note here. The Dirty Underground is the pinnacle of crime in this city. The Nightingales are going to take him down alongside the Chicago PD and Beavers. They're going to contact eyewitnesses about who's in the Dirty Underground, and they have at least half, hopefully all, of the Chicago PD on board. The Nightingales will have as believers join in the search. And then once they find the hideout, they're going to watch out. They're going to stake it out until they find the identity of anyone involved. They suspect a roadie as he asks the Nightingales to join the Dirty Underground committee by note to Notaris. The Nightingales, along with the Chicago PD, will arrest a roadie and any other officials. And if they can't arrest them in committee, they'll do it outside their homes. Capture them and deliver them to the police. Then the Nightingales and police will move into the hideout to save Mayor Washington, who I guess had been kidnapped by this point. Once the Nightingale drives him home, Burt Property will begin construction of the statue in the 42nd Ward. Parties that sign this will hide out in the hideout until peace. And Burt Notaris will, of course, be out on the streets. The Nightingale plans on dying and having a statue constructed in the 42nd Ward as a symbol of justice and order, so fake Nightingale's death. This is a really good, bordering on perfect final note. A good rule of thumb for final notes is if this were the finale to a movie or the final episode of a TV show, if it would be entertaining, it's a good final note. You want you want your crisis arc to really be building to this crescendo of your final note where everything comes together, you use all your previous resources, and that's what Parker does here. Burt Property that he established in, I think, note 2, he's using them here. He's building the statue. He's worked with the Chicago PD a lot. He's using them. He's worked with Beavers a lot. He's using Beavers here. It was established earlier that the Nightingale has a lot of supporters, so he's using these supporters here to join in the search. The roadie, it's always important to remember, I guess to metagame committee, I guess, would be a good way to put it. You are your character, so if somebody passes you a note that says, hey, do you want to, commit this crime with me? You can use that in a note. You can say, like, hey, this person wrote me a note saying, do you want to, do a crime with me? Don't, lie about it. If that didn't happen, don't pretend it did, because your staffers will know, because that other person won't have mentioned it in their note. He's going to arrest this guy. He's going to save Mayor Washington. And, of course, dying in the end. I think it's a nod to The Dark Knight Rises. Maybe not, but, it's a good finale. And then here's the 4 other delegates who signed off on it. So this is a really good note here. Like I said, I'm not really entirely sure how he only got an honorable mention. Maybe other delegates were just really, really strong, and there were just some arcs that, just amazing. Or maybe Mayor Washington was in committee, because unfortunately a lot of the time when you have a sort of governmental board, or any kind of board really, as a committee, and the person who is like the undisputed head of that organization is a member of committee, they don't really have to do all that well to get an award. Like at VIX this past year, there was the JCC was the German and British Foreign Offices in 1914. The Kaiser was in the German side of the committee, and we had a delegate in there, and apparently the Kaiser didn't really do anything the entire time, but by virtue of being the Kaiser, they had so much power, and they did end up getting an award for it. So maybe that's what happened. I don't know. But another thing here that, it's not really Crisis Arc related, but it is important, especially if you're the villain, which Parker wasn't in this instance, but he almost always was. Let them hate your character, but don't let them hate you. Let's say Burton Natars had gone another route and he had decided to be a super villain instead of a superhero. Let committee hate Burton Natars, despise him. He's ruining their plans. Blah blah blah. Make them love Parker Bennett, because if they, even aside from just it's nice to be nice to people, if people like you, they're more likely to work with you. If they don't like you, they won't work with you, and they're more likely to specifically dedicate notes to screwing you over. If you've been in committee before, I'm sure you can think of somebody who every time they spoke, you were just like, oh my God, I hate this guy. And if you haven't been in committee before, you will experience that. Hopefully that guy's not you. Don't be that guy, because nobody likes that guy, and you're not going to get an award by being that guy. You can get an award by being a villain easily, but not by being that guy. And obviously awards aren't everything, but it's nice to be recognized for the hard work you put into your committee. So that's everything for this video. Like I said, if there's anything that you'd like clarification on, or anything that I didn't explain well enough, feel free to leave it in the comments, or to message me on GroupMe, or just reach out to the club in any way, and we can elaborate on it. And if you have any feedback or things that you'd like to see future videos cover, please let me know that as well. And I hope you enjoyed it.